also just would like to thank the BBC BE, our mother body, for the gold sponsorship, and also to SAWIC as well, the mother body of the Young South African Women in Construction, for the bronze sponsorship. You know, it's always nice to get pocket money from your parents, especially when you're working. Danko leadership. As guys, like I said earlier, I'm your pilot. And you know how a pilot always has that serious, don't worry, I'm not going to kill you voice? Well, it's time for me to put on my pilot voice. It's time for the discussions to start, our first discussion of the day. Please remember to use the chat box. We really do want to have an interactive session. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your questions. Our panelists have availed their times in their very, very busy and hectic schedules to be here to attend to the youth. It is not for a second that we take for granted the people I'm about to introduce in discussion one. We really do appreciate you being here. When we talked about you in terms of the discussions and we made up how the panels and the discussions will be made up, we had to come up with names, and many names were put on the table. Like I said earlier, we had to sit down and come up with different ideas around the Women's Month program. And when we finally decided on our panelists, we had confidence that we have a panel that is going to give a great engagement, a panel that is going to change the lives of people. This is not just going to be a discussion for today and tomorrow we're gone, we forget about it, but there'll be tangible opportunities and tangible actions to take that we've already heard them, and we haven't even started the discussion, and we already have presented a few cans of Red Bull for people to drink in order to get their wings. What they do with it is really up to them. Thank you once again to everyone who's spoken. Thank you to everyone who is supporting us for the sponsorship and also for being here. Allow me, please, as the pilot, once more, pilot, I'm not going to kill you. It's going to be a safe ride. Buckle up, enjoy the ride. We're going on a journey. Allow me to welcome our panel. First and foremost, Omam Bathabile Dlamini. I mean, I don't know if I even need to do an introduction because this woman needs no introduction. She is a true definition of imbogoto. And Mam Lucy captured it so well when she said, thank you, Mam Bathabile, for what you've done for women. Thank you for the roles that you're in. You make sure that you really proliferate women. You really make sure that women have a space. And when we hear that there was a time in the ANC that women were not allowed to talk, and it's not because of the ANC, it's how situation was at the time. And today we can say Mam Bathabile is the chairperson of this, and she's the head of that. It is amazing. I mean, let me not steal the moment, and let me just acknowledge some of the wonderful achievements of Mam Bathabile Dlamini. She holds the chairperson position at the Social Housing Regulatory Authority, and she's also the vice president of the Pan-African Women Organization. Worthy to note, and I believe this caught my eye when I was reading her biography, is she in 2018 was appointed as in the ministry of the office of the presidency responsible for women, and this is why I believe it is so important to have Mam Bathabile as a panelist, because women empowerment is central to her being. Welcome, Mam Bathabile. We truly are honored to have you here, and we say thank you so much for being here. We know how hectic your schedule is. We know how you even had to work your day around being here today. My second panelist is Mamkile Mteto, no stranger to the built environment. You saw her face earlier on, but she is the deputy president of the Black Business Council in the built environment, and she is here to talk in that capacity. She's in the infrastructure, ICT, engineering space, to name a few. Based on her experience and comprehensive understanding of the plight of Black business, specifically SMMEs and women-owned entities, Mamkile has been invited and seconded by various ministers and organizations to participate in the renewal of legislation and policies, such as the BBBEE Code, to name just one. When they say a mother's love is the toughest but the best kind of love, they definitely meant Mamkile. Our next panelist is Ms. Tasneem Fredericks, the Black Management Forum Deputy President. Tasneem is the director of the law firm Fredericks Incorporated, National Executive Member of the Black Conveyancers Association. If you don't know who I'm talking about, really, guys, we've got internet, we've got data, we've got all these wonderful things that allow us to get to know people before such wonderful opportunities to sit and hear them. Tasneem is a force to be reckoned with, and she holds empowerment dear to her heart. And we will hear when she speaks how important it is to empower Black people, but specifically Black women. It is amazing the work that Tasneem is doing. Our next panelist, Ms. Ipile Mukari. I'm like having a a moment of awe because I really do look up to women like May Mokari. She established the first Black-owned CCTV business and co-founded Muteng Investment Holdings in 1998. I don't think we understand how difficult it was to establish a business back then. Right now, you just log in and you open a CIPC website and you register your business. To have a business from 1998 still running today and running very well is an achievement of its own. I really, really do appreciate you making time to be here. She's also well educated and is an Archbishop Tutu Fellow. She is passionate about transformation in the commercial building space or commercial property sector. She is the very definition of playing the long game. It definitely pays off. Thank you, Mam Kari, for joining us. Miss Confidence is our next panelist. She's a professionally registered geotechnical engineer and a client manager at Zutari. She's worked in South Africa, Malaysia, Gabon, Nigeria, Malawi, Australia, to name a few. She serves on the geotechnical division of the South African Institute of Engineers Board. Confidence is also a founder of a social networking platform designed for women around the globe, offering a safe space or platform to connect, engage, celebrate, and uplift one another. I think by just reading her bio, you understand why she's a member of this panel. Wonderful, wonderful work that you're doing, and we're really grateful to have you here. Miss Adelia, a young woman who impressed us so much that we knew she had to be amongst the titans. She had to be sitting here to give her contribution in order to motivate us, but uplift us and also show us that there is hope. The build industry really does create a livelihood. It really does change a life. This young woman took on the construction industry head on, making a name for herself. A clear example of empowerment starts with self. She faced challenges rather than allowing those to define her. She pushed on. She's affiliated to programs such as Women Creating Wealth, Gracia Machel Foundation, and Investec Business School. Let's get right into it. Our panelists have been very patient, and I'm very excited to get into our first discussion. We're talking economic reconstruction and recovery, the role that youth, women, and persons with disability can play. Kindly note, this was what our keynote address was going to speak to. However, because of the fact that there is other national duty that she had to go to, we kept the topic in line with what our panelists had already prepared. And right now, I'm very grateful. I'm very proud to have so many wonderful women being the keynote address for discussion one. Mamba Tabile, can you come in? We really are excited and grateful to have you here.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Let me start with acknowledging the President of Built Environment, as well as the CEO, the President of SAWIC, Mama Kile, as well as Deputy President of Built Environment. Young people that have organized this dialogue. And as well as our stakeholders, NHFC. It is with pleasure that you have invited us here. It's important, more particularly because your theme is centered around Charlotte Maxeke. And Charlotte Maxeke, in her words, believed in bring her up, which means that President Egile has the responsibility, and all of us, of bringing up young women in the built environment. And South Africa remains a patriarchal country. And so we need to strategize when dealing with the issues of women. But also it's important that we take along men that are gender sensitive, because we don't want to fight men. There are those that are feminist and gender sensitive, like Ubaba Xuma. When in the meeting of the ANC in 1912, some were asking what martial law was doing in that meeting. One, there were women waiting outside for her. But two, it is Ubaba Xuma who stood up to say, I know Charlotte Maxeke. She is a hard worker. And she was even attending their own meetings and them to do their work. But one other thing, as first president, he was not in the meeting, but he was elected. So we see always how patriarchy changes itself, and you think it's no longer there, and you find it sitting there. Now, SHRA is a regulatory body. And it's responsible for the growth of rented stock. But before I move further, because sometimes when I get given a task, I check the background of that task. There are many houses, or there is a lot of rental stock that was there before 94 that just disappeared. So there we need to try and deal with that issue. And then secondly, what I found out is that when we talk about women, we talk about women that are rubble removers, that are only managers for companies that get accreditation and can build. We also do not highlight all the stages properly, so that everyone can access funding. For instance, equity. With equity, we found out that those that have been contributing their equity without problems have been borrowing money from state institutions, but the whole thing is a secret. Women and other groups are not told about this. And so that is why we ended up having a meeting with South African women in construction, because we agreed that we cannot just sit there being women and not enable women to leverage on the program of social housing. Government puts a lot of money in social housing, and it's a sustainable money, And also it can carry you over a long period of time. And I think what is going to be important is for SAWIC to identify areas where they want to build, because we've dealt with the issue of accreditation. People no longer pay big sums of money for having someone to fill in the bulk forms. And as we are trying to reduce those bulk forms, we are not going to sacrifice rules of accessing an SHI. But many forms are problematic, because in the whole booklet that we've done, there is a lot that is there that is blocking Black people from becoming owners of SHIs.
Thank you, Ma. I'm sorry to interject. I think I'm just worried about time because we've got a few other panelists.
Okay.
I'll still you into the conversation though. Ms. Ipele Mokari, can you please address us? The virtual floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Program Director. It really is an honor to be here, and I hope you can all hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Let me quickly share a screen so that I can also just pick up from some of the comments that have been made. And before I do so, I would like to just greet a number of individuals, and particularly to greet all the young women and men who are here with us today. I'd really like to say thank you to the organizations SAWIC, as well as BBCBE, and all the presidents. I've listened to the various presidents speak of Black Business Council, my brother there, Gregory Mofokeng, also of the council, the vice newly appointed vice president. I'd like to congratulate all the new incoming individuals and leaders who've come into those organizations. I'd also like to just greet Mamba Tabile, who is our president of the Women's League, and who's also the chairperson of SHRA, and really just to say all protocol observed. If I haven't greeted you, I just do want to say that I acknowledge your presence here today. I'm going to share really a brief presentation. It's something that I felt, you know, it's important for us to be able to talk about these conversations in a manner that allows us hopefully to see ourselves as players on the stage and players on our own stage as women, as young women, as youth, as individuals of persons with disability. We have stages in our lives, and this is your stage. And being able to understand all the people around you who are on that stage, all the props that you need, the elements that are obviously affecting you, it becomes quite important, I think, for us to bring different viewpoints. And I hope that my viewpoints are going to be able to help you. I'm going to share a little bit about what I see and where I think COVID-19 has really had a really big impact on all the designated groups we're talking about today, and how I believe and strongly believe that there is a way in which our reconstruction and recovery plan of South Africa is able to get us onto a better platform as women and as young people and persons with disabilities. It is obviously going to require our personal grit and commitment to this. And with that comes an understanding. What are you dealing with? A lot of the speakers have already spoken about some of the key issues that we are dealing with as women in this particular sector. So I think the first thing to acknowledge is that COVID has had a massive impact on women. And one of the key areas that I've researched since last year, after we all went lockdown, there is a particular survey that was done, the 2020 National Income Dynamic Study, which has really been called NIDS, which really is talking about the Coronavirus Rapid Mobile Survey, which outlined that more than 60% of COVID-related jobs or losses were amongst women in South Africa. That's a staggering number, that more than 60% of the individuals who were impacted by this COVID-19 pandemic have been women. And we've seen that also, similar statistics globally. The impact of this obviously has meant significant unemployment, major financial losses or socioeconomic related impacts and losses for women, and obviously for men as well. But it has been particularly challenging, I think, for women, and specifically for women entrepreneurs, because we've seen how so many women who've been in business, who've maybe just started, young individuals who've just started, suddenly being thrown off their path because of the challenges that came that no one would have been able to foresee. And really what this has outlined for all of us are stark inequalities. I think that the most and greatest and urgent opportunity, obviously, is the redevelopment of critical social infrastructure nationally in our country. And we need to be part of that. I know that SAWIC is such a great organization in terms of getting women in construction moving. My focus really is to say access to economic participation of women entrepreneurs has to be our singular focus as business and political and public sector leaders. There's no other thing that we should be focused on. So where do we see, and where do I see some of the reconstruction and recovery opportunities? We know that our President Ramaphosa has outlined last year already a reconstruction and recovery plan. I want to just focus on two areas. There are going to be pillars of the plan, and they're going to be enablers of the plan. We, as obviously designated groups, need to understand where we fit into this entire plan. The reconstruction and recovery plan really rests on, I suppose, 4 key pillars: reform, jobs, infrastructure, and power. And the enablers to drive those pillars have got to be obviously a social compact, clear skills development, a new normal in our lives, and policy. Policies are critical to actually make sure that we can begin to drive implementation. And these are the key areas, energy, the industrial base, the green economy, tourism, food security, obviously agribusiness, infrastructure, mass public employment, and a number of other macro interventions. It's so critically important for us as women and as individuals who are youth and persons with disabilities to begin to recognize our stage. Where is your stage when it relates to some of these sectors? Because these are the identified sectors when it comes to reconstruction and recovery. And even if you are just in construction, sorry, I'm just taking off my scarf, it's a bit warm now. Even if you are just in construction, consider the impact of construction across all of these industries. There isn't an industry here that we are looking at that doesn't require some kind of construction ability, whether it is at the small scale entry level or at the larger scale. And I think what's very, very important is to be able to understand how we begin to involve ourselves in some of these substructures or subsectors, and ensure that we understand what the enabling environment is and how we are making sure that we are getting involved either in policy engagement or understanding what skills developments are required to be in these sectors and so forth. So my last 2 slides really focus on, I'm a woman entrepreneur, and as the program director explained, I've had 23 years in this particular sector, which means I'm close to 50, but not yet there, which means really to all of the young women out here, I want you to know something. I started when I was 23. It was absolutely difficult and most challenging, but it is possible. I know that many of you have already started businesses, and I applaud you. I support you, and I really encourage you to continue to do that, because the journey to entrepreneurship is just that, it's a journey. It is not an event. What this particular slide really is talking about, and the World Bank CEO at the time was saying that women in Africa are more likely to be entrepreneurs because we are self-starters. We are able to get up as women in South Africa, but we will face far more obstacles than men to create and then to sustain businesses. As we know, there is so much out there in terms of the blockages in our society. We need to be able to encourage young women like yourselves out there, younger than 30 years of age, to start early. and get yourself to understand that you are going to lose more than you win, but you will win anyway. My final comment really here is that the model in my mind for economic recovery, where women and persons with disabilities as well as youth will be successfully able to achieve participation and sustainable involvement in the economic recovery, is really one where our leadership needs to understand that the concept of public-private partnerships as a model for economic recovery is one that has worked globally. So whilst the impact of COVID has been so dire, it has created massive levels of income inequality and poverty and joblessness and halted entrepreneurship success. But principally, the PPP framework also allows us to say, how do we rebuild our society from what we have? So the foundations of a successful PPP model ultimately are based on risk transfer. We need to share risk. We need to have shared value as well. And I think that we've seen in countries like Indonesia, where they have gone from being significantly affected by this pandemic, but also can start to talk about massive growth rates of 6 to 7% because of a deliberate and intentional focus on public-private partnerships, government and business coming together, really making a social compact. And our key areas of focus on these models as young women, as business women, as people with disabilities, needs to be linked to sectors where women and youth and persons with disabilities can be participants, drivers and collaborators. It needs to be areas like agribusiness, tourism and hospitality, energy, property, infrastructure, and digital economy. I'm very proud to be part of an organization that has recently been put together. My chairperson, Ms. Lebogang Zulu, will speak later. It's called the BRICS Women Business Alliance, and I hope she will share a little bit more about what we are aiming to try and achieve and hopefully launch later this year to share with South African women and South African business people just how we believe that women, youth and persons with disability require access to markets, skills, development and information, and can get that with the appropriate partnership around these key stakeholder groups.
Thank you so much, Nomkari. And as expected, it really is encouraging and very important things that you've shared with us. Being familiar with the WBA as well, I'm very excited about the work that's being done there. I'd like to welcome Ms. Tasneem Fredericks to the virtual floor. If you do see my face pop up, I don't want to interrupt, so it's just to say we must make time for the next speaker. So when you do see my face, please just acknowledge it as a way of wrapping up what you're saying, because we still want to have those question and answer session. I know technology took up a lot of our time. We just really want to give everyone time, but also have that interactive session. Ms. Tasneem, the floor is yours, and thank you for making time for us.
Thank you so much. I'd just like to, obviously also first greet the BBCBE Youth Leadership. The fact that we're having this session that has been arranged and orchestrated so well by the youth of this particular organization, for me speaks to the ability and capability and competency that the youth in this country show, and how we can battle to give young people an opportunity in this country when we look at the, how our government comprises of so many older people. I think we definitely, not to be ageist, older people have years of experience, but how are we going to transfer that institutional memory skills and competencies if we are not going to take young people into our confidence and into our mentorships and just, give them that kind of guidance that a lot of my generation lacked growing up. I think it's important to note that we all don't come from the same dinner tables, and that a lot of youth in this country, come from school and their parents are not there. So homework is not something that gets done at home, it actually gets done at school. And how do we build on a future that is going to have leaders that are going to take South Africa further and close these gaps of inequality? So that was just welcoming and thanking the youth on the BBCBE, and also just to say welcome to the new leadership appointed at the BBC, wishing them very well from the BMF, and also to Mamba Tabile especially, to say thank you to her. I'm sure she's got a very busy schedule, and what she's spoken about, we can really lean into that. Mamkile, we all serve on the BBC Women Alliance, and we've got a chat group. So I was taking photos of her and posting it, and all the women were going wild, of course, because that's how we as Black women support each other, and we are cheerleaders for each other. Yeah, also, I mean, if I haven't mentioned anyone in particular, please don't be affronted by that. I'm going to be lazy and say all protocol observed. Mine is really just to say, based on the topic and based on, where we are as a country, and how do we rebuild and reconstruct? During COVID, post-COVID, we saw that there was very little support for women and the youth, and what I like to call differently abled people. And I think that there's a huge, in terms of how far we are in closing that gender gap and closing possibly the youth gap. And if we look at the percentage of differently able people in South Africa, it's not that large, so we should be able to absorb all of them. It should not be an issue if it's 5% of the population, or even 10%. That should not be an issue. And I think it's very important when dealing with these issues to say, are we applying a robust lens, gender lens, a lens that speaks to how we address the youth unemployment, and also cater for differently abled people. Just 1 second, I see my battery low. I'm so sorry about that. I just want to quickly plug in so that I don't lose anyone on the call. I'm sorry about that. I just want to plug in quickly. Can I try and find, okay, let me speak, maybe I can finish in time. So yeah, I think from the BMF perspective, we've looked at this a number of times, and what we have said is that what are the solutions? We have had the problem statement stated, so I don't want to repeat it. I do want to say that I actually agree with most of what was said. And as the BMF, we recommend that, the implementation of deliberate measures such as set-asides, quota systems to ensure women representation, youth representation, and differently abled representation in South Africa. And we've seen this with the president of the country specifically stating last year on Women's Day, I think it was in the Northwest province, that 40% of procurement will be given to Black-owned businesses. Now, how this actually translates, I haven't quite properly seen that yet, but I think it's important that we start somewhere, and with a pronouncement from the highest office in the country. And then also, I mean, issues like access to capital and debt relief with repayment schedules offered to the largely informal self-employed sector. I think we can't forget the rural economy in this conversation. It's not specifically under this topic, but I think it's important that we address that because it does exist. Training in financial literacy and industry-specific technical assistance. That's a definite big one for us at the BMF. And then investment in infrastructure that ensures a safe and protected space for women to take public transport, to trade, to live and to breathe. I mean, we live in a society, or rather country, where you can't even go to the post office in broad daylight without worrying whether you're going to be attacked and come out alive. I mean, these are our realities. I think also important is to extend social networks, mentorship, enhance digitization efforts to scale women-owned, youth-owned, differently able-owned small businesses. And lastly, and I think this is for me most important, is to say that there can be no delegation of agency on self-determination for women. The same way that we can't outsource transformation to white people, there is absolutely no question in my mind that we can outsource the issue of the woman agenda, of the youth agenda, and of the differently abled agenda to anyone that does not fit those three classes. And in no way do we want to exclude men from this conversation, but I think they need to know their place. They need to know that they are an ally to us, but they're not going to lead us. Kedibone, I understand time is an issue and I'm scared my battery's going to die. I'm going to try and find the plug quickly. So I would like to end on that note, but thank you for having me. It's always exciting to be part of these platforms, and I look forward to the balance of the engagement. I'm very interested to hear what the other speakers are going to be saying.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for those very, very inspirational and wise words. And yeah, like you said, we cannot leave transformation to someone else the same way we cannot leave women empowerment to someone else. Ms. Confidence, can you come in to a brief intro and we can get into our discussion?
Thank you so much, Kedibone, for the platform. Firstly, I would like to thank the BBCE and SEWIC for bringing us together to really work together in mitigating the issues that are at hand with regards to economic reconstruction and recovery. I would like to acknowledge the prominent women that we have amongst us, and including the male counterparts that have really joined us in this conversation. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us to engage in this conversation. And so it's such a beautiful, beautiful year wherein we are able to reflect and acknowledge the work that has been done by the women who marched to the union buildings. And as we stand today, we are the products of such work, such big work that was done in the past. So we'd like to acknowledge and really appreciate the work that has been done already. So and today we are talking about the role that women, youth, and persons with disabilities can play in economic reconstruction and recovery. As we understand, on Thursday, the 15th of October last year, our president presented the economic reconstruction and recovery plan, and which basically forms part of the extraordinary measures that the government has taken after a proper consultation with businesses, labor communities, in order to restore the economy to inclusive growth following this devastation coronavirus pandemic that we've been in. We all understand that COVID has had a huge impact in our economy, in the work that was being built so properly in the past. I won't repeat what our previous speakers have mentioned, but we all can attest that there's a huge group of youth sitting with unemployment. So what is it that we can do today as the young women standing in amongst ourselves? What is it that we can do to work together in order to rebuild our economy and reconstruct and make sure that we have a better future? So as the president has spoken, there is a plan to unlock 1 trillion of infrastructure investment over the next 4 years. And so by looking at that, we understand that we do have all the resources, that we do have some of the resources that we need. We do have a plan in place. So just by looking at COVID-19, it has done a lot of impact. It has done a lot of negative impact. But the question that I want us to ask ourselves this morning, that is it really worse than the apartheid era? Are we in a worse situation than the women who marched to the Union Building in 1956? When I look back, I realize that those women have really laid a good foundation. They've paved a way for us. We are sitting in a system wherein we now can access education. We now can access all the resources that we need in order to rebuild the future. We have got prominent women, sitting amongst ourselves, who are initiating business and leading us. One, for example, is Salon Maitete. She has richly done well by showing that women can be in STEM and lead. However, as we speak today, amongst ourselves, only 3% of CEO of our women in the STEM section. And so the biggest question is, if we've got all the system in place, where are we going wrong? We already know that in the previous years, the biggest hindrance that we have had in the system was corruption. Another issue that we've always had as a country is our resistance to change, resistance to adopt modern ways of doing things. We've always been behind on the chain of the 4IR. So the biggest thing that I want us to look at is that what is it that we can do to make sure that with all the resources that we have in place, we can actually work together to rebuild rebuild our construction and recover better in the next coming years. We have already spoken about, we are aware of the 4 priority interventions that we need to do along our infrastructure investments. Wherein when I look at that, I understand that we have been the enemy of ourselves. We have been the one that have been hindering ourselves. I mean, the government would release funds, and then few months down the line, we realize that the funds have not been doing it correctly. So with all these resources that we have, what can we do to combat corruption in such a way that we know that we can rebuild our economy better with all the resources that we have? When you speak of expansion of energy and generation of capacity, we also have resources, but what is it that's still stopping us today to ensure that our rural houses, or rather rural areas, can all just access renewable energies? We are all sitting with a big issue of increase and a high demand of electricity and increase of electricity costs. But with all the skills that we have in the engineering space and all the resources, what is it that we can do better as a young woman and youth to make sure that with the resources that we have, we can actually use that to improve and rather solve the biggest issues? The issue of job creation, I believe we have set strategies in place, and it's time for us to act. It's time for us to work towards improving entrepreneurship amongst the young people. When you look back in our past, women have done so great in agriculture. What is it that's stopping the young women of today and young people to actually get on those journeys? Because we know that that's where that's one of the biggest core which will take us to a better economic state, and while combating the issue of unemployment. So when I look at in the situation that we're in, I don't think we are really in the worst of the worst situation. We have our resources, we have our education system in place, we have the great leaders and women that we are amongst today, and we've been really on a journey today. So what I believe we need to be doing is to say, with all the systems in place, what can we do to fight everything that has been stopping us to succeed with the systems that have been put in place? And I believe that we are the answer as women. I believe we are the answer as young people. We need to be acknowledging the new technologies that are in place. The 4IR is here for us to use that to our advantage to make sure that we can combat and solve most of these issues. One more important thing that I really want to touch on before I exit, because I see the presenter is already back, has got her screen on again. It's our issue of education, both formal and informal. There's a huge investment that is being done on that. And I believe that we need to acknowledge the fact that our education system needs to start bridging that. We are building the youth of today to solve tomorrow's problems, not just yesterday's problem. When we speak of the new 4th industrial, the foundation and network, it's going to be our structure. Yes.
Sorry about that. I just have to let other people speak. I did send you a message to just say, please, let's just be mindful of everyone else who's made time to be here. So one thing that I'm appreciating about all the speakers is I can even see from the chat box that they aren't questions, because the ladies are addressing so many of the things that already were put in questions as well. There's so many things that are being addressed here that I don't even see why there's a need for a question and answer session, because a lot of the issues are being highlighted: education, technology, self-empowerment. I mean, Makali spoke about very important matters that even I, on my questions that I had, I looked at them to say, wow, they're actually being addressed in the speeches, because it really is how much this topic touches your hearts and touches your lives that you're able to address so many things. Thank you so much, Confidence. We really do appreciate your address, and I apologize once more. I did really try a few times to just say, please, 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 so that I do not cut you off. I really do appreciate your time and the passion that you showed. Mamkile, our Deputy President, can you give us an address? And just like everyone else, please, I'll say to everyone, please, let's try to keep it short, but at the same time, thank you guys, and please continue covering as most topics, because the reason why we're not getting questions is because you really are addressing a lot of things in your address.
Thank you very much, our forever energetic program director, Gidiboni. And you must just recognize that some of us are very old. So when we've got to speak, we've got a lot of information given the history of our lives. So if you're going to give us just 2 minutes, it becomes a problem. But having said that, it is your tough job as the program director to ensure that you keep us on time. Without further ado, let me just take this time to greet everybody who is here in this particular webinar. Starting with the president of the BBCBE, Ntate Denny Masimini, the Deputy President of SAWIC, Lucy Mwabeni, the Treasurer General, the entire leadership of the South African Women in Construction and the Built Environment, nationally and provincially. The leadership of the BBC Youth, the Purifilwe Lediga, the President of the ANC Women's League, who is also the chairperson of SHRA, Mamo Bathabile Dlamini, and our stalwart. The MEC of the Gauteng Department of Infrastructure, Honorable Tasneem Motara, is also in our midst. The Deputy President of the BMF, Mam Tasneem, that has already spoken. I see we also have got the Chairperson of the BRICS Women, South Africa, Mamu Lebogang Zulu. Actually, we are just in the midst of greatness. So many presidents and deputy presidents and captains of the industry and all of that. But allow me to say all protocol observed and a very, very warm welcome to all the queens of the industry that are here today. As we continue to celebrate the Women's Month following the 150th commemoration of the lives of Mamu Charlotte Maxeke, who is actually a legend in her own right. I think my predecessors or the speakers that have spoken before me have actually alluded to the selflessness and the bravery that she has shown as an individual. We are standing here today on the shoulders of the giants of her magnitude, not forgetting the impact that has been played by the women who marched in 1956. And our heartfelt gratitude goes to Abu Mamu Albertina Sisulu, Abu Rahima Musa, Abu Sophia De Bruyn, Abu Mamu Winnie Madikizela Mandela, and many more who were there to ensure that they trailblaze for us to be able to stand on this particular trajectory that we are in today. It is actually very much of a great pleasure, and with humility, I appreciate this opportunity that has been given in this history-making kind of an event. Also, maybe I must also apologize, for the time that is very short. When you've got a group of women all the time, you need to have enough time because ours is to speak, is to pour our hearts out and also to empower each other. We are also learning as the youth that have organized this program that maybe next time we should also not have many, many speakers so that we can allow enough time and engagement. But well done to the youth of SAWIC. Today we're talking about 65 years and we're still counting post the marching of the women. And we are also looking at how far have we come, what has been the impact and also where to from here. I believe that we've made great strides as a country because before 1950s and also before 1994, would never be sitting here and having the freedom of speech as women. Would never even have an opportunity where we can sit and criticize each other, criticize our government freely, or even participate in any leadership discussions that have got to do with our country and with our lives. But thank God, because today we are talking about the constitution that has been adopted that actually recognizes the rights of women as equal to those of men. We are talking today about the generation equality. But the question is, what do we mean by generational equality? Have we achieved that? What is it that we still need to do for us to be able to achieve that? And one of the things that came to my mind was that the realization of generation equity is going to be a long journey, it's not a destination. And a long journey means that we've got to play it or run it as a relay. The people that have lived before us, which are called our foremothers, actually did their bit. Today, we are the generation that is in existence, we're doing our bit. But at the same time, we should be working on the exit strategy of how then do we hand over the baton to the next coming generation, which is of the youth. I am very pleased that in our small spaces, we are able to make our own contribution because the future lies in the hands of women. Above all, the future lies in the hands of the young women of this country. Sadly, the face of poverty in today's life still has got the face of a woman. I don't want to dwell much into the statistics, and I'm hoping that the chairperson of the BRICS Women South Africa will actually share the document that she has done that will outline the statistics of where we're sitting as women in terms of the economic participation of this country. But just to sum it all, it is a whopping 58.6% of women that are still living in poverty today, and we continue. I don't want to dwell much as well in terms of narrating the negative aspect, but I also want to move on to where to from here, because I believe that when there is a problem and you want to know how to solve it, you speak to a man. But if there is a problem and you want it to be fixed, you need to speak to women. So I'm going to speak now to what are the proposed solutions that maybe we as the women need to do and need to push for, need to fight for, so that at the end of the day, we are able to achieve what we would like to achieve in seeing the women participating in the recovery of the economy of the country. First, I am of the view and in support of the slogan of the UN Women that says #put cash in the hands of women. And the time has come, the time is now. We have been talking about it for the longest time, but we need to ensure that we have got deliberate efforts that we're putting into that is actually trumping against a proper plan. So as a South African Women in Construction, we have embarked on the Vision 2020 strategy that we've spoken about. And we have been able to register a number of achievements towards the pointers or the pillars that we had actually put in place. And one of those pillars is actually ensuring that there is a panel of contractors or panel of players in the built environment for the targeted groups. What we mean, if you've got a tender that could address most of our issues to government, because government is the biggest spend as far as infrastructure projects are concerned. So there is a need for us to have a playing field that has been leveled. And I know we've been talking about the leveling of the playing field for the longest time. But now we need to rise as the targeted groups of this country to force government and also to force the private sector to have the panels that will only allow the competition amongst the targeted groups. Because right now we all know that women, youth, and people with disabilities are always standing at the back footing when it comes to getting opportunities of participating in the space of the economy of this country. Therefore, by ensuring that those panels are there, you're allowing people that are of the same magnitude, the same size, the same capacity to contend for the opportunities that are coming from government. Secondly, we need to ensure that the policy reform is aligned to what is being pronounced. We have heard over and over the ministers in their budget vote speech, the president of the country, talking about the 30% budget spent for women. And that is what we refer to as a gender-sensitive kind of procurement. Even last week, when the president of the country was addressing Women on Women's Day, he emphasized the issue of 40% that needs to be spent on women. But without a proper gazetted kind of a policy reform that underpins that kind of a trajectory, it is not going to happen. You speak to officials, you speak to opportunities, they tell you, show me the policy, show me the gazetted policy reform that can be able to allow me or assist me to ensure that I do that targeted procurement. So when the president of the country speaks, we all know that that should be translated into a policy. And without that kind of a policy, we are going to have a problem. We need to see the infrastructure development deliberately creating new sectors of the economy so that we can allow new entrances into the space. And here we're talking about the alternative building technologies. There is a 40% commitment that has been made to say every infrastructure development that is happening in this country has got to take into cognizance at least 40%. In that case, it allows again another level playing field because we're all going to be new entrants and your people with targeted groups can be able to participate in. And also the water space, other spaces where we can look at those opportunities and enforce 40% spend. Finally, we need to also look at the ease of access for land for the targeted groups. If we don't own land, it's going to be very difficult for us to play in the space of infrastructure development. And that is a fact. Land is actually the one commodity that we need to own as the targeted groups of this country. And lastly, we need to look at the future skills. We're talking about skills development all the time, but are we really developing the skills that are going to be needed by the future economy of this country? Or are we just developing skills because we are used to producing skills? Are we training people for impact, or are we just training people for numbers? So those are the things that we need to look at. I think we also need to look at the issue of active citizenship. We've got a lot of social ills, ladies, in this country. We've got a lot of problems that are affecting women, talking from the gender-based violence. The statistics that are talking to the teenage pregnancies in this country is actually very appalling and very much heartbreaking. So in order for us to be able to prepare the future for the targeted groups going forwards, it is very important that we need to do a combination of impacts that are going to ensure that the future looks as bright as it should. But as a country, I'm sure that we've achieved a lot of things. And I see that the program director is back there. They're saying to me, get out, get out, get out, get out. I'd like to wish us all of the best with this webinar. I think it's a very, very good starting point. And maybe without even reading the poem, I'd like us to take some time even tonight before we go to bed and read the poem by Maya Angelou that says, Still Arise. Because as we continue to read the kind of a poem, we get to be encouraged as women, and we get to be encouraged to stand for our own rights. But at the end of the day, we get to be encouraged to know that patriarchy cannot keep us down. We need women leadership. We need women leadership that gets to be supported by other women. And I thank you, Program Director.
Thank you very much. Without taking my time, I'd like to bring on Ms. Adelia, and I'm going to do you an injustice and say I'm giving you 2 minutes because we're left with 6 minutes of our allocated time. But one thing I want to appreciate all the panelists, and I was hoping we could have a closing or even 1 or 2 questions, but time is really not on our side. Ms. Adelia, when you come on, I know you did not want to do this address because she's very much on the shy side. Maybe you can do it in a form of answering this one question. Zebo is asking, with regards to female entrepreneurship, is this for informal and formal sector? And also, are we addressing women owning shares or women actually running businesses? So I think the reason I'm giving you these 2 questions is because I want you to be on the virtual stand, but also they do address questions that you align to what you're doing as a young woman in business. You can answer these. Thank you. 2 minutes, please, so that we can do a formal close. And I can acknowledge my wonderful speakers who've taken the time that we truly appreciate.
Yes, I just wanted to answer the 2 questions. I think it was something that I wanted to talk to is that we as women, we need to occupy all the leadership roles. We shouldn't be classified that this is where we need to lead. But I believe that as women, we need to occupy all the leadership roles and take business decisions, including the shared decisions. What I wanted to add is that, yes, as women, young people, and people with disability, we want to play a role in the reconstruction of the economy. But we need to make sure that we are well equipped, as we know that in the construction sector, there are a lot of compliance. So without compliance and making sure that we are educated, have the skill, and we also reskill ourselves, because I think there's a lot changing in terms of technology. So we must make sure that with digital transformation, we are able to tackle opportunities that arise. I think Mem Kile also spoke to land, the issue of land, because we find ourselves that there are a lot of women in the agriculture space, but how many of us are actually owning the land? And also to young women and youth out there, we know who we are out there making sure that we trend. Can we also trend in terms of making sure that we share opportunities that are out there so that we also inspire others that it's possible? There's a speaker that spoke about how it's not easy in the construction industry. We all know how tough it is in terms of late payment. So we need to make sure that we also encourage others to believe in themselves, because there are no instant results. You need to put in the work and make sure that you show up and we occupy and excel spaces in the leadership sector so that we are able to open more doors for others that are looking up to us. There was a lot that I wanted to share, but we don't have enough time, and I'll just like to say to the other speakers, they've covered a lot of what I wanted to share. Thank you.
I have to agree with you because even on my side, we had prepared questions, we had discussions also on our side of what we wanted to talk about with the panel, but it's amazing how everything has been addressed, even more than what we wanted to discuss. And that is why I don't think we made a mistake in our panel. And I don't think we made a mistake with the people that we chose. From Mambatabile, you address key issues that a lot of us did not even think of in our pre-planning of the event. And Mr. name, my goodness, we knew you'd be the right fit for this. And you address such key matters as well. And Memokari, oh my word, thank you so much for being here, for making time. Your presentation was very clear, very much pro-empowerment of self. And there's various industries that you showed us that we don't have to always just focus on one. A lot of things touch on one another. So I just want to say thank you. And if I may just ask all our panelists to switch on their cameras just so we can have a look at them once more and truly acknowledge the Mbogotos that we have in our midst, the woman of power, woman that I personally look up to and say thank you so much. Thank you for being here, hearing us. And when we called onto you, we were not sure that you would respond positively. And we are so honored as young people. We are so deeply privileged as young women to have you in our midst and to have you an email away to say, can we share a thought? Can we hear from you? And I was saying to the team in the background that there's so many resolutions that you've shared, that you've put tasks on our table now. Mambatabile, the things that you shared, we've actually written them down to say, these are the things we need to do now going forward. You know, there's so many things that you, Confidence, have sparked in our heads to say, how do we now do this going forward? So thank you so much once more. We really, really are honored. Thank you for your time as you go on with your day and the rest of this Women's Month. I wish you all the best and we are grateful. Thank you once